This is Todos Cafeteros, and today I'm covering match days 3 and 4 of the CONMEBOL 2026 World Cup Qualifiers that happened on October 12th and 17th respectively. So I will go top to bottom based on the table after match day 4, which you see here, and review each team's performance in their two games that happened over the last few days. As always, a special focus on the games of the Colombian national team, but let's start with the team at the top of the table, Argentina. Argentina's first game was against Paraguay, and Argentina had 75% possession over the entire game. Only one team was playing here. 15-4 shots, 4-1 on target, 91% pass accuracy, 9-1 corner kicks, a shot against the post, another hit the crossbar, and a well-deserved win. Only 1-0. The score was probably too low in the end, but a well-deserved win by Argentina here over Paraguay. The second game in Peru, Messi dominated Peru basically by himself. First half, 2 goals by him alone, and then another in the second half was called back by VAR, which was a debatable decision, but Argentina won 2-0, and after 4 games and 4 wins is top of the table. In second spot, it's Uruguay. Uruguay's first game in Colombia. It felt like Colombia handed Uruguay a point in this match, but maybe I'm biased. Uruguay didn't play a good game, somehow ended up with a point after converting a penalty in extra time. Their second game against Brazil, though, they won. So 2 shots, 2 goals. Uruguay wins 2-0 against Brazil. It felt a little bit more like Brazil beat themselves. But if you're that efficient with your chances, you deserve to win. It was a very unlikely win. Brazil had complete control with 61% possession and a pass accuracy of 91%. Yet Uruguay won more of the ground and aerial duels. And when it mattered, they used the Brazilians' defense confusion in their own box to their advantage twice. So Uruguay in second spot, but tied on points with Brazil and Venezuela. Third spot, Brazil, as I just mentioned, they lost their second game, but let's start with the first game against Venezuela. Brazil was amazing weak in the first half. They went up 1-0 in the 50th minute then after a corner kick, again, just like they did against Peru in match day 2. And Brazil with more urgency after the 1-0. So they cranked up their game, but then Venezuela with a counter with a late goal to tie the game in the 85th minute. A beautiful goal. Bejo with a wonderful goal, probably the best goal of this match day or of the competition so far. Brazil afterwards then tried to get a second goal in, but couldn't figure out the Venezuelan defense all game apart from that one corner kick. So it was a 1-1 tie, a deserved 1-1 tie over the entire match. Again, in the second match against Uruguay, as mentioned earlier, Brazil controlled the ball, but not the game. 61% possession, 91% accuracy in their passing game, yet only 2 shots versus 5 for Uruguay, none of them on target. So you can't score a goal if you don't manage to bring a shot on target. Meanwhile, for Uruguay, both shots that went on target actually went in, and so Uruguay won 2-0. And to add insult to injury, Neymar also got injured and had to be substituted out. He'll miss a few more weeks here and might not be able to return for match day 5 and 6. Brazil, after 4 games, is now third in the table, which gets us to number 4. And I've seen those memes. Gran Colombia is breathing in the neck of Brazil. So you basically have right after Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. But let's start with Venezuela. As mentioned and just talked about in their first game against Brazil, Brazil tried to get Venezuela into foul trouble by flopping early on, which resulted in 2 yellow cards in the first half for Venezuela. But once Brazil realized that they were facing a strong opponent that day, they shifted to actually playing football. Venezuela, though, surprisingly offensively minded. When they relied on counterattacks in week 1 against Colombia, they now took the ball and created chances for themselves against Brazil. Even after the 0-1 setback, Venezuela was able to get into promising positions, but Brazil's midfielders were usually faster, sprinting the ball off their feet. So Brazil with more drive after that, but no second goal. And when Venezuela had their chance, they took it. Eduard Bello with a spectacular goal here to tie the game in the 85th minute. Probably the best goal of this international break. What a goal. Venezuela shocked Brazil. Venezuela tied with Brazil 1-1. And while the difference in individual skill was obvious, Venezuela fought hard for this 1 point. In their second game against Chile, after a slow start, the team was able to handle Chile pretty well. Soteldo with a goal, an assist, and a hockey assist. Venezuela won 3-0 and now has a surprising 7 points after 4 games. They're on track to get their first World Cup qualification ever. And to be honest, those 7 points so far have been very well deserved. They are playing well, they're playing offensively, they're always getting into dangerous situations, whether that's through counterattacks or through very well executed gameplay. And if they continue to do so, I can see them playing their first ever World Cup in 2026. But until then, it's a long road, but they're off to a great start. But let's talk about Colombia, how they performed in match days 3 and 4. Here in the table after 4 match days in spot 5, which would be a qualifying spot for the World Cup. But again, long road to go there. Their match day 3 game at home against Uruguay on October 12th. Let's look at their formation. So you have Vargas in goal, that's no surprise. Fabra, Sanchez, Cuesta, and Santiago Arias in defense. Santiago Arias finally being able to get back into the starting 11, and a little bit foreshadowing. It wouldn't last long. He got injured and wasn't able to play in the second match. In midfield, you have Barrios, John Arias, and Uribe. And then the attack seems to be the big question here. So there are multiple formations that I've seen before the game, during the game, of how things were expected to happen. So you have one where Lucho is on left, James on right, with Borré as the center forward. You have another prediction here where Borré plays on right, Lucho on left, John Arias more center, and then James as center forward. What ended up happening though, and you see that here on the player's average position, which is basically tracked through the device that they have on their body throughout the entire game. We have some stats here from the first half alone, and then separately for the entire game. Those are not as valid in my opinion because some of them got substituted out, which then skews the results a little bit. But let's look at the first half's formation here because they are very well in position and how they basically played. So you have James with the number 10 as a traditional number 10 behind the center forwards, so behind the attackers. And here you have Borré on right and Lucho on left. So that's how they actually played. And none of the formations that I've seen in the reports around this game actually had that formation in attack as it was actually executed. But yes, you have James back, not anymore in a center forward position, but back in midfield as a 10. And then you have Borré over right, and then Luis Diaz over left. Basically 2 forwards, even though they both let themselves fall a little bit, depending on the situation and which side they executed their attack from. But Colombia controlled the game for the majority of the game. Possession was fairly equal for both teams. Uruguay's fast counterattacks were less organized, but Colombia failed to make the right decision when they were getting closer to the goal, like Uribe in the 15th minute could have created a great dangerous chance here, which didn't happen because he made the wrong decision. James then brought Colombia in front 1-0. The stadium went nuts. James, the best player on the pitch that day, his best game in a very, very long time. I haven't seen him playing like that in years. And then on the other side, Matias Oliveira was able to tie the game. Then the post and crossbar saved Uruguay twice. Mateus Uribe with the 2-1 after an assist by James brought Colombia up 2-1 again. And so Colombia was able to maintain that 2-1 lead until late when Vargas saw a red card and Uruguay was awarded a penalty. Definitely the right decision, but a super unfortunate event here. Was definitely a foul and a penalty, but 2 yellow cards make a red, and so it was unfortunate, but definitely justified. That penalty brought Uruguay back for a somewhat lucky 2-2 draw to end this match day. Vargas now out for match day 4, and on match day 4 the team traveled to Ecuador, so playing on the mountain in Quito, in the high altitude. Again, Vargas not in goal, not allowed to play due to his red card against Uruguay. And we're looking at the formation here as well. So you have a defense of Machado who went further up the field, so he didn't necessarily stay in defense throughout the game. You have more like a 3 defenders there with Sanchez, Cuesta, and Mosquera, who came in for the injured Arias. But yeah, Machado kind of went forward into the midfield more. Castaño and Uribe played next to him in midfield. You have John Arias, who is listed here more offensive midfield, but he let himself fall a little bit so that you basically ended up with 4 to 5 midfielders, depending on whether you want to count James as a midfielder or attacker. But James again in his playmaker position, with Luis Diaz coming over the left attacking side, and then Borré staying on the right. So again, similar attack here as against Uruguay in the first game. Also against Ecuador, you have James coordinating in midfield, Borré and Lucho over the sides, over the wings. And it was an intense game in Quito, arguably the best game of both teams in this competition so far. Don't let the result of 0-0, a scoreless tie, mislead you. Colombia missed a penalty kick. I have no idea why Borré didn't shoot it. Why did Lucho take the ball from him last second and then missed it? And then when VAR reversed the Colombian goal a few minutes after, again, in a dangerous situation there. I think the VAR decision was justified in my opinion. It's okay not to award a goal. Borré completely blocked the goalkeeper, and so the shot didn't count. Obviously unfortunate for him to stand in that position. It wasn't really that he wanted to get into that position and block the goalkeeper, but he happened to stand in the goalkeeper's box, and that's obviously an offense when you prevent the goalkeeper from catching that ball. You can see here how Borré distracts the goalkeeper. Borré doesn't touch the ball, isn't technically offside, but when blocking Ramirez, he then takes an active part in this scenario, which is why the goal cannot count. For the future, I hope that the penalty taker is chosen by the coach. Borré already placed the ball and prepared mentally to take it. Then Luis Diaz stepped in to take the kick and missed. Again, overall, the draw is a fair result for both sides, in my opinion. They were both equally strong. But if you have a chance to go up 1-0 with a penalty, you don't create confusion by changing the kicker last second. Overall, 10-8 shots in favor of Ecuador, but 3-3 on target, even just like the end result. For Colombia, the final 2 games this year will be against Brazil in Barranquilla on November 16th, and then an away game in Paraguay on November 21st. So right behind Colombia, as mentioned earlier, in the table, Ecuador to complete Gran Colombia. Here with those three nations in the table, and Ecuador's first game in Bolivia. Battle of altitudes, both teams with home stadiums high up on the mountaintop on match day 3 here in La Paz now. Ecuador scored late in the first half and late in the second half to win 2-1. Moises Caicedo with assists to both goals. Bolivia with a few more chances, but all that in vain. Ecuador prevailed against Bolivia before facing Colombia. And then against Colombia, we just discussed that game at length. Ecuador with lots of energy and drive. They created a bunch of chances. So did Colombia, and the scoreless draw is a fair result in the end. We are getting closer to the bottom of the table, so in 7th spot, which is the qualifying spot, you would have to go through an additional qualifying game here to make it to the World Cup, but yes, chances still exist if you end up in the spot currently occupied by Paraguay. First game in Argentina, as discussed, Paraguay had no chance in this game. The 0-1 result does not reflect Argentina's dominance. Paraguay with only 25% possession and 4 to 15 shots, 1 to 9 corner kicks, and only 72% successful passes. A well-deserved defeat. And then on match day 4 against Bolivia, and while Paraguay was a no-show against Argentina, Bolivia was a no-show against Paraguay here. Paraguay won 1-0 but had 13 shots, 7 of which on target. Bolivia did not bring a single of their 6 shots on target. 62% possession for Paraguay, 8-1 corner kicks, 80% successful passes versus Bolivia's 61%. In the end, it was one-sided and the 1-0 result not high enough. So you have Paraguay now with their first win and 4 points in total. Next up is Chile, their first game against Peru. They won 2-0. Chile dominated Peru here. 64% possession, 12 to 4 shots, 6 to 0 shots on target. Their goalkeeper, Cortés, did not have to save a single shot, and Chile didn't let Peru even attempt a shot inside their own box. Pretty impressive display, even more so after those disappointing performances in week 1 and 2. Is Chile back in shape now? No, the answer is no. Match day 4 against Venezuela. They started off well, but then let Venezuela get into the game. And when that happened, it was over. Very disappointed here by Chile all the way to the end. Venezuela won 3-0, deservedly so. Chile only brought 1 shot on target. That was then saved by Romo. Alexis Sanchez might have been the only Chilean player who didn't disappoint, but that wasn't enough in the end. And as I have just mentioned Peru in their game against Chile, let's look at Peru. Again, in Chile, Peru didn't get a single shot on target. You can't win like this. Peru lost 0-2 in what probably was their worst performance so far. Chile dominated that game all game long. And then the second game against Argentina at home, but there was no chance against Messi, who brought Argentina up 2-0 in the first half. Peru tried counterattacks every here and there, but wasn't able to pull all the way through. VAR and Argentina switching a gear back were the only reason this didn't end up 4-0. And we're at the bottom of the table. Bolivia not only winless, but pointless. First game against Ecuador, Bolivia with 13 to 8 shots, 5 to 4 on target, 5 to 0 corner kicks, and yet Bolivia lost this game. Ecuador with the 2-1 victory in the 96 minutes. A little bit unfortunate, but at this point it's a pattern here. Bolivia not a single point. Ecuador was used to the high altitude and Bolivia couldn't benefit from their usual home field advantage. Then in the next game against Paraguay, Bolivia basically did not happen. No shots on target, only 38% possession, 61% of their passes made it to a teammate. Losing 0-1 did not reflect how bad Bolivia was in this game. And so after 4 games, Bolivia doesn't have a single point. Dead last in the table after 4 games. Nothing lost at this point, but Bolivia will have to start taking advantage of their home field advantage here in the high mountain range in La Paz at some point to get some points on the table. Something that made them strong in the past, but for now, it's just not enough. And that was it. Match days 3 and 4, Colombia with 2 draws, 2-2 and 0-0 was able to add 2 points to the total. Argentina in top position and Brazil in crisis after only 1 point during this round. Neymar with an injury, but let's hope their crisis continues a little bit longer, because in November they will play in Barranquilla against Colombia, and at least for that game, I don't have a problem with them continuing their crisis and hopefully losing there. So Colombia might leapfrog them in the table. Let's hope that happens. We'll be back to report on that game in November. But for today, this was it. This was Todos Cafeteros. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.